The number of Chinese killed, let's say, in 1 year, and by mob action exceeds all the blacks lynched in the entire history of the United States. And the number of Armenians killed in Turkey, during the First World War is greater than that. And of course, the number of Jews slaughtered on a number of occasions in history, even before the Holocaust, is greater than that. So that the question is, why this particular kind of people are the targets of so much venomous hatred?
Part of the problem here, and this is an old clip that we showed you, I think once or twice over the last year or so, is that so much of what has happened on the left is the left are obsessed with victims or perceived victims, right? So if you are a minority, you are supposed to be a victim. Now, there's several groups, but most notably the Jews who don't fit into that, because Jews who have been oppressed and pogromed and holocausted and gone through the Spanish Inquisition and all of these things somehow figure out a way to be successful. That's largely because of family and culture and tradition and caring about education and all of these things. And that doesn't fit in the left's intersectional calculator, so they hate them the most, because it's like, oh, you're proof that what we are saying is not right. We need our minorities to be oppressed. Here is Thomas Sowell on that.
Fascinating story, because among the middleman minorities, of which the Jews are the most prominent, the hostility to these people in countries around the world is out of all proportion to that, to any other kind of group I can think of. In terms of violence, the number of Chinese killed, let's say, in 1 year, and by mob action exceeds all the blacks lynched in the entire history of the United States. And the number of Armenians killed in Turkey, during the First World War is greater than that. And of course, the number of Jews slaughtered on a number of occasions in history, even before the Holocaust, is greater than that. So that the question is, why this particular kind of people are the targets of so much venomous hatred? Years ago, one official of one of the Jewish organizations in New York asked me, well, what can Jews themselves do in order to minimize the hostility they face? And I gave him a one-word answer: fail. Because as long as you succeed, you're going to be hated.
Yeah, and it would be better for Jews and everyone else not to fail. How about get in the game? How about care about the things that will lead you to success, like education, like family, like knowledge, like hard work, things like that? Maybe if you're jealous of the Jews, you should emulate some of those things. Not that all Jews are great at all of those things. I know a lot of Jews who are utter failures. But the basic idea here is that we as a society for the last decade have put so much primacy on victimhood and minorities and all of these things that now the very people who purportedly care about the oppressed are going after the people that they should be probably defending more than anyone else in some weird sense. Here's a little more on Thomas Sowell and his explanation of how liberals just play on pity and victimization, and it actually does not make sense if you look at the numbers.
Is the victim mentality holding you back in life?
You can't stand self-pity. Is that part of what's going on here?
Partly, yeah.
And somehow or other, the liberal project plays on pity.
Yes. And in fact, in the book that I'm writing now, I discovered this is true not only in the United States, it's true in England, and the situation is wholly different. And yet, if you read the data, for example, from London, the educational tests and so forth, you see that there, immigrants from Africa pass this test they have. I'm talking about low-income people now, nearly 60% of the time. Blacks from Caribbean, like 50%, so on. Native-born whites in the same low-income bracket pass this test 30% of the time. And it's the same thing. The foreign people come in, they haven't had generations of being steeped in the welfare state vision, the vision of grievances, victimology, and resentments. The idea that there are enemies out there dedicated to keeping you down. That's the message that's been pumped into the head of the white lower class in Britain, and that's the image that's been pumped into the black low-income people in the United States.
Do you get how dangerous that is? If you just look at someone and you say, you are of this religion, you are of this skin color, you're of this sexuality or gender, and then, I mean, I know you guys know this, but it's just we still have to get these points across and say, okay, so this is how it is for you. The system is rigged against you. Then those people will be willing to burn down virtually everything, right? In the name of getting to their new utopia. But then he points out that these new immigrants who happen to be black come over from Africa, and there's many examples of this, where they come over to Africa, and because they haven't been trained into thinking that the welfare state is important and everything is against them, and they're not getting all these handouts, they bust their asses and work hard, just like probably your grandparents or great-grandparents did, and then they make it better for the generation beneath them, versus the people who are stuck in a cycle of poverty, who are basically given just enough to keep going, but never really succeed. And that's another reason that we have to think through all of these government programs. Has any government program, as it relates to homelessness or getting people off drugs or handing out food stamps or anything, does it work? And the answer almost exclusively is no. I'll be honest, guys, I do just about anything to avoid going to the doctor, but I also know how important it is to stay on top of my health, especially with regular labs and blood work. The truth is, a lot of people feel nervous about blood work and what it might reveal. That's why I made one simple lifestyle upgrade: Field of Greens. Field of Greens is a delicious, doctor-formulated superfood drink packed with fruits and vegetables that support your heart, liver, kidneys, metabolism, and immune system. And the results speak for themselves. One customer wrote, "The best blood work I've had in a decade." Another said, "For the first time in years, my cholesterol numbers are normal." Feel better, live healthier, and impress your doctor. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use code Rubin at checkout to get 20% off plus free shipping. That's fieldofgreens.com, code Rubin.